Chapter 582. One time, he waved it directly at Luchengdi. Although he didn't hurt him, the fear caused by the bloody blade passing through his eyes was unimaginable. Luchengdi was so scared that he was stiff all over and didn't dare speak. After taking the thing, Prince Kong almost threw it in front of Luchengdi. Right? The biggest setback in Luchengdi's life was probably the imperial noble consort. The rest of his life was basically smooth sailing. Being threatened like this, he was naturally unwilling to be angry. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. His temples bulged, and the veins on the back of his hands jumped. He glared at Prince Kong. "Father, are you really not going to thank me? If so, don't blame me for being ruthless." He walked toward his younger brothers with the saber. Just now, he had already killed 2 of them. If he killed another one, even if he killed all his brothers, no one would find it strange. Therefore, he subconsciously wanted to hide. However, even if he could hide from Prince Kong, he could not hide from the many Imperial guards. However, one of them was still calm and sat there. He was Li Hongming, Prince Rue. As Prince Kang's #1 opponent, Prince Kang's first target was naturally him. He walked up to him, put the saber directly on his neck, and looked down at him condescendingly. Prince Kong was once fiercely suppressed by Prince Rue, which even made him feel breathless. He knew very well that some of the officials who were secretly loyal to him didn't think he was qualified to be an emperor. They assisted him only because of benefits. They praised Li Hongming more. But so what? Now, he was still at his mercy. That kind of pleasure was no less than when he confronted Luchengdi directly. "Li Hongming, you probably didn't expect this day to come." Prince Rue looked at him and slightly moved his eyes away. He saw that Yu Zhongqing had quietly walked over, and this good brother didn't notice at all. Prince Rue sneered in his heart and pretended to be calm on the surface. "I really didn't expect this. There was something else you didn't expect. As the saying goes, the ruler is the leader of the officials, and the father is the leader of the children. You are the official and the son, but you are so rebellious. Even if you succeed today, what can you do? With such immorality, even if you ascend the throne, how long can you sit on it? Li Hongming, don't be so righteous. Don't say that you don't want it. After so many years of fighting, who doesn't know who doesn't? This prince admits that this prince wants the throne, but this prince only wants to prove to Imperial Father that this prince is the most suitable candidate. If Imperial Father gives it to him, he will accept it. If he doesn't give it to him, he will have no complaints. Your disgraceful behavior. Even at death's door, you still have this hypocritical face. Who are you putting on this act for?" Prince Kong pressed the knife in his hand on Prince Rue's shoulder and cut a hole. He didn't have the patience to continue talking nonsense with this defeated opponent, so he turned to Luchengdi. "Father, if you don't write, then I can only send my younger brothers away first. When I'm the only one left, can you pass the throne to an outsider?" Luchengdi's eyes were filled with hatred. Then he met Li Hongming's clear eyes, and his heart inexplicably ached. He trembled as he picked up the pen. In the end, he couldn't watch his eldest son kill his other sons, and he didn't want to die, so he could only choose to compromise. Noble consort Su looked at the Empress. The Empress raised a good son. He really resembles his mother. Knowing what happened today, even if the Empress was sick, she wouldn't be absent. She had been holding on. I can't compare with noble consort. Ever since the Empress fell ill, she didn't have the energy to meddle in Prince Kang's affairs. Whenever she thought about it more, the dosage of the medicine would increase. The weakness of her body also obliterated her ambition. Her last extravagant hope was probably the position of Empress Dowager. At least she would die a decent death. However, at this moment, compared with the son she looked down on, she was not so excited. She even felt a little uneasy. Not to mention other things, this lady, Su, was really too calm. But this didn't seem like the appearance of a fish on the chopping block. The Empress's eyes fell on Yu Zhongqing. This commander of the Imperial Guards was also a little unusual. When she saw Yu Zhongqing quickly draw his knife, block the knife in her stupid son's hand from bottom to top, and put the knife on her son's neck, she knew that she didn't have time to remind him. However, even if she said it, it wouldn't change anything. She gave up. Even if there were other arrangements, she didn't think it would work. Looking at noble consort Su, she said, "See, in fact, I can't compare with noble consort. Compared to the empress who accepted reality at the first moment, most of the others were stunned." Prince Kong, who was flaunting his power just now, became a fish on the chopping block in the blink of an eye. Wasn't this turn of events a little too fast? After being stunned for a moment, Prince Kong quickly turned into anger. He was a little stupid, but it didn't mean he was completely brainless. How could he not know the current situation? "You Zhongxing, you dare to betray this prince. How dare you, how dare you?" These words were very similar to what the emperor said before. "Eldest imperial brother, save your strength." Prince Rue touched his neck, then looked at his fingers. They were stained with blood, but he knew the injury wasn't serious. He waved his hand and didn't care. He slowly straightened his sleeves and stood up. "What betrayal? Official, you has only been loyal to Imperial Father from beginning to end. He only knew that you wanted to rebel and extort a confession. So he beat you at your own game and put on such a good show with this prince. It sounded so good, but who would believe it? In essence, wasn't he the same as Li Hongyi?" Prince Kong was so angry that his face turned black. He thought he had a card up his sleeve, but unexpectedly, something went wrong at this juncture. In his opinion, there was a problem at the place where there should be no problem at all. Prince Kong was furious and unwilling to give up. He struggled desperately, but how could his little strength be compared with Yu Zhongxing, the commander of the Imperial Guards? Unable to break free, he cursed loudly without the slightest elegance. Seeing this, even the Empress repeatedly doubted whether her child had been swapped when he was born. Not only did he not resemble her at all, he was even worse than his father. Therefore, the Empress had already expected the final result. She had a similar feeling from the beginning when she was schemed against and fell ill. However, the Empress sneered in her heart. It was still unknown who would win in the end. In fact, everyone already knew who their real opponents were. Since they had all made their moves today, their goals were probably the same. Right now, Prince Rue had the upper hand. However, compared to Prince Kang's arrogance just now, he appeared much more graceful. However, no one would think highly of him. Prince Kang's brutality was on the surface, but his viciousness was in his bones. This kind of person was even more frightening. Li Hongming no longer paid attention to his elder brother. For some things, he no longer regarded him as an opponent. Such a person was really not worthy of his attention. If he won, he should look like a winner, instead of making people think he was a villain who was intoxicated with success. That would be a little ugly. He walked calmly to Lu Chengdi, squatted down beside him, and gently held Lu Chengdi's arm as if he wanted to straighten his posture. "Father, it's my fault for frightening you." Then he picked up the pen that fell from his hand because of the shock and put it in Lu Chengdi's hand. "But father, forgive me for being rude. As the saying goes, a country can't be without a ruler for a day. For the prosperity of the country and the stability of the imperial court, we should appoint a crown prince as soon as possible. Father, why don't you write an edict to appoint a crown prince today? No matter who you appoint, I will fully support your decision." It would be a problem to believe him. Lu Chengdi tilted his head and looked at him. Although there was no knife on his neck, he felt no better than when he was almost chopped by his eldest son. He was even more frightened to the bone. He could still scold his eldest son, but now he couldn't speak. "What's wrong? Father, do you think there's something wrong with what I said?" Prince Rue continued to speak softly and pretended to be polite. "You see, if father had appointed a crown prince as soon as possible, we wouldn't have to scheme against each other all day, right? However, it's not too late now. No matter who Imperial Father chooses as the crown prince, I believe that the other brothers will not disobey Imperial Father's decision. They will do their best to assist the crown prince and make our Qiyuan dynasty more prosperous." Li Hongming looked at the other brothers. "Don't you think so?" The swords of the Imperial Guards were still pointed at them. How could they dare to say no? Except for a few, the others hurriedly expressed their opinions and agreed with Li Hongming. "Father, you see, we all think so. We brothers have always treated each other with respect. Even if there are some small conflicts, we won't take it seriously. After all, we are all blood-related. In this world, there is no one who is closer to us than us, isn't there? So, Father, why are you still hesitating?" Prince Rui held Lu Qingdi's hand that was holding the pen. You are very good. Really, really good. Lu Qingdi said with a trembling voice. Thank you for your praise, father. I will work hard in the future and do better. I won't let you down. Prince Rui smiled gently and elegantly, looking very gentlemanly. It was rare to see someone as hypocritical and shameless as him. Lu Qingdi began to write the imperial edict with a trembling voice. It was good to give the throne to such a son. Anyway, in terms of ability, he was the best among all his sons. Although he had some flaws in his temperament, it was no big deal when he became the emperor. Even if he was hypocritical for the sake of reputation, he could still do something good for the world. Lu Qingdi thought sarcastically. Prince Rui watched as Lu Qingdi finished each word with a smile. After confirming that it was him, the smile in his eyes became more genuine. When the last word was finished, Prince Rui took the imperial jade seal. Lu Qingdi didn't hesitate any longer. When he stamped, he did it neatly. Father, you trust me. I won't let you down. But, father, what should we do with eldest brother? Lu Qingdi glanced at him. At this point, he had completely calmed down. He said indifferently. He rebelled against his superiors and killed his brothers. He was stripped of his title and demoted to a commoner. He was imprisoned and would not be pardoned. I will listen to you, father. Prince Rui was very obedient. Father, when will the imperial edict be issued and announced to the world? Lu Qingdi rolled up the imperial edict and threw it to the chief eunuch beside him. Go and announce it immediately. In addition, I'm a little tired recently. I ordered the crown prince to supervise the country. Prince Rui was very satisfied with his father's tactfulness and cooperation. Your Majesty, you have been working hard these days. You should have a good rest. Noble consort Su said softly. Lu Qingdi glanced at her with an extremely sharp gaze. However, at this moment, imperial concubine Su didn't take it seriously at all. Perhaps because everything had been settled, she seemed to be in good spirits. There was more color on her face, and her illness had subsided. She seemed to be several years younger. After the eunuch left, Prince Rui clapped his hands again. A group of palace maids came in with trays with 4 wine cups on each tray. In the future, I will need more help from my younger brothers. Once again, I will toast to you all. At his signal, each of Lu Qingdi's sons and grandsons was given a cup. The imperial guards hadn't withdrawn yet, so they didn't dare to refuse. However, all the children who were older had a share. It would be strange if there was no problem with this thing. Li Hongming also had a cup. He picked it up and said cheers. He drank it directly. The others hesitated and trembled, not daring to drink. Third prince, as the future crown prince, you must be open-minded and care for the world. You must love and care for your younger brothers and nephews. Lu Qingdi emphasized every word. I will remember father's lesson. Prince Rui smiled. Please. He listened and agreed, but didn't take it seriously. The princes looked at each other. They didn't know what was wrong with the wine, but he probably wouldn't kill them. Bah, Li Hongming, don't pretend. Who knows what the hell this is? You want me to drink it? No way. Do you think you've won? To tell you the truth, Qin Tianming is my man. Shen Shihan also made a move outside the palace. Let's see which of the two of them is better. Seeing that Li Hongming's expression had finally changed, Prince Kong laughed heartily. Li Hongming didn't expect this, but he calmed down quickly. The left commander-in-chief was bewitched by you. That's why he was confused and made a mistake. Considering that he made a lot of contributions to Qi Yuan in the past, I believe father will be lenient and explain it to him. I believe the left commander-in-chief will repent and be saved. Prince Kang's laughter stopped abruptly. The winner of the battle between them had been decided. Qin Tianming was not a fool. If he knew the news here in time, he would not continue to act according to the plan. Li Hongming, you're really good at scheming. Don't waste time. Drink it. Otherwise, if we don't deal with the matter outside, Qin Tianming will lead his men to besiege the mansions of the princes and officials and hurt the people in them. That's not good. Li Hongming continued to say gently. It was a threat. It was a hidden threat. If they didn't obey, they would be implicated. Moreover, if they didn't stop Qin Tianming in time, all the blame would be put on them. It was vicious. Therefore, They could only bite the bullet and drink it one by one. Those who didn't want to drink were forced to drink it. Lu Qingdi looked at him helplessly. What on earth did you give them? It's just a medicine for the extinction of descendants. Don't worry, father. It won't harm their bodies. Lu Qingdi suddenly looked at him. His suppressed anger boiled again. Extinction of descendants, extinction of descendants, extinction of descendants. He had never thought that his son could be so insidious. Yes, he didn't kill anyone, but this move also prevented future troubles. Without descendants, how could he fight for the throne? No officials would help him. His goal was achieved, and his reputation was saved. Good. Lu Qingdi had to admit that he had underestimated him before. In that case, I hope you can give birth to a son as soon as possible. Otherwise, you won't be able to find a candidate to adopt your son. Or do you mean that your painstaking plan will help other people in the clan in the end? As long as it's the Li royal family, you won't let down your ancestors. Lu Qingdi sneered. Lu Qingdi's words inadvertently stepped on Li Hongming's sore spot. However, this kind of thing couldn't be exposed, otherwise he would lose face. Father, you're only half right. A voice that everyone couldn't be more familiar with came from the door. Everyone turned to look at him in unison. Li Hongyuan walked in against the light. He was wearing a black robe, which made him look like a deity descending to the mortal world. He was handsome beyond compare. He walked in unhurriedly. Every step he took seemed to be measured with a ruler. Li Hongming was so shocked that he almost jumped up. When did you come back? Li Hongyuan smiled. It's such a wonderful show. Wouldn't it be a pity if I didn't come back and missed it? There were more than one or two people who were as shocked as Li Hongming. Lu Qingdi was no better. Imperial father probably doesn't know, but this son that you just made the crown prince has already been infected with the sterilization powder. Madame Lu being able to conceive a third child is already a great fortune. If you want him to give you an imperial grandson, I'm afraid it won't be easy. Li Hongyuan, don't talk nonsense. Li Hongming was furious that his wound was exposed so easily. Li Hongyuan glanced at him lightly and declined to comment. Speaking of which, I have to thank Third Imperial Brother. Everything that should be dealt with has been dealt with cleanly, saving me the trouble of having to do it myself. Bastard, you're really ambitious. I used to love and trust you so much. Lu Qingdi said angrily. Trust? Love? Who cares? Li Hongyuan said indifferently, not taking Lu Qingdi seriously at all. To me, if it weren't for the fact that you still have some use, do you think you could have survived until now? His words were even more impolite. Lu Qingdi was so angry that he was panting, and his voice was like a bellows. Li Hongyuan, how dare you be so rebellious? Lord, you kill him. Father won't say anything even if you execute him on the spot. Li Hongming didn't care about his reputation now. If Li Hongyuan didn't die, he would definitely be in big trouble. Yu Zhongxing directly let go of Prince Kong and walked to Li Hongyuan with his saber. When everyone thought that the two would fight immediately, Yu Zhongxing sheathed his saber. Greetings, Your Highness. Li Hongyuan casually waved his hand, and Yu Zhongxing walked behind him. The position where he stood was exactly the same as the position where he stood behind Lu Qingdi. It was a very defensive posture. Li Hongming's vision turned black. They all miscalculated. Li Hongyuan, this person hid much deeper than they expected. Li Hongyuan, do you think you could become the right commander? Right commander? Before he could finish speaking, another person came in from behind Li Hongyuan. With a little curiosity, he walked to the front and casually threw the thing in his hand forward. When it landed, the black cloth outside scattered, and a bloody head rolled out. Who else could it be but the commander-in-chief of the right? Right, Commander? You can't fight. You couldn't even take 3 moves from me. He Zhihai frowned. He was very doubtful that such a person could be a commander. Li Hongming's mind was blown. There were only 2 words left. It was over. This time, it was completely over. Although he still had the former way as his trump card, if he couldn't take this step, the former way card was equivalent to a useless card. The shocking effect of this head was definitely much stronger than when Prince Kong killed his own brother. After all, he was just a child. Was he the same as a general with military power? Absolutely not. Even Lu Qingdi's scalp was numb. In terms of ferocity, No one could compare with the living king of hell. Li Hongyuan didn't even blink. I thought you would directly take the throne. In the end, I underestimated you. If you want to force the abdication, then so be it. You still want to have a good reputation. If the plan had succeeded, it would have been a good idea. Unfortunately, it's not bad. This way it's not bad. It'd save a lot of trouble. Prince Kong planned to force the abdication by force. In order to gain the recognition of the officials, besides capturing them, he also needed to control their families. Prince Rui planned to let Shen Shuhan save people so that the officials would be grateful. He would become the crown prince and let the officials protect him step by step. Even if there were still many remnants of Li Hongyi, they wouldn't be a destructive threat to him. In this way, the restrictions of the former way would be reduced. However, Qin Tianming was Li Hongyuan's man. Naturally, he wouldn't act according to Li Hongyi's plan. Instead, he guarded against Shen Shuhan. Coincidentally, neither side touched the officials' houses. The two sides directly fought. Unfortunately, it was ruined by a bastard like you. Wait, Li Hongming thought of something. Li Hongyuan, Imperial Father's imperial edict to appoint me as the crown prince has already been issued. Moreover, don't forget that you're a devil. How can the officials agree to let you ascend the throne? Li Hongming became excited. He felt that he had grasped the opportunity to win. Li Hongyuan's lips curled into a mocking smile. Bring him in. Thus, the eunuch who had just gone out to announce the edict was dragged in like a little chick and thrown to the ground. Then, a bright yellow edict was handed to Li Hongyuan. Chapter 583. The imperial edict now represented the demonstration and symbol of Lu Qingdi's power. Li Hongyuan's stomp on it was undoubtedly a trampling and contempt of his power, a provocation and humiliation to his supreme authority. For Lu Qingdi, this was even more unbearable and infuriating than the threats made by Prince Kong and Prince Rui in the open and in the dark. Li Hongyuan, he roared furiously. Don't be so loud. I'm not deaf. Li Hongyuan said disdainfully, say some words. I've been tired of hearing them for a long time. You can't come up with anything new. And don't accuse me of those crimes. Standing here is the best proof. What's wrong with the title? He laughed carelessly. I didn't take reputation seriously before, and I won't take it seriously in the future. If I want something, I must get it. It doesn't matter whether you give it to me or not. Whoever has the ability to take me down, just do it. If he does, I'll praise him for his ability. It was because of his indifferent attitude that he seemed invulnerable. You couldn't do anything to him. Seeing that Lu Qingdi was about to die of anger, Li Hongyuan's eyes fell on Li Hongming. Devil, the important officials are still in the main hall. Why don't we go there now and talk about it? Let's see if they will try their best to stop us. After that, Li Hongyuan waved his sleeves, turned around, and went out. The rest, including Lu Qingdi, were all driven out to the main hall. Did they want to stay put? He Zhihai was a real killer. He had killed the important officials in the imperial court for Li Hongyuan's promotion. He really didn't care about killing a few more. Except for Lu Qingdi, there was no one he didn't dare to kill. Well, Lu Qingdi was Li Hongyuan's father. To be honest, it was not that he didn't dare to kill him. But after all, he was Li Hongyuan's father. Therefore, when he Zhihai grinned and held the knife to cut Prince Rui's arms, legs, and neck, no one dared to hesitate. Although they were staggering, only a few of them could maintain their composure. Emperor Lu Qingdi, the Empress, and the imperial concubine needed someone to support them. Their shoulders were drooping and they were trembling. This seemed to be a sign of their fate. In the main hall of the Thousand Years Hall, it was also very quiet. Although the imperial guards did not enter, they were heavily guarded. Even if they did not know the situation next door, they could more or less guess what was going on. Especially since the two martial governors had left midway and had not returned. But those who wanted to go out were all blocked back, waiting anxiously. The people at the door receded like the tide. The people in the hall got up and then saw Jin Xin Wang striding in. How many people sucked in a breath of cold air? Their legs and stomachs couldn't help but tremble. Regardless of when he came back, just by looking at this posture, it made people feel bad. As expected, people came in one after another. Regardless of whether they were high-spirited or elegant, they were either dispirited or full of resentment at this time. For a moment, it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Li Hongyuan stood in the middle, looking at the position of the throne. In the end, he did not directly walk up. It was not because he still had some scruples, but because he disliked that seat. After a moment, he turned a small circle, and with a smile that was not a smile, he seemed to sweep his eyes over everyone. Darren, I'm afraid that you still don't know what happened. It doesn't matter. Yu Zhongxing, tell us what you know first. He Zhihai, tell us what happened outside the palace. Yu Zhongxing responded with a grunt. He started from when Prince Rue tried to recruit him, to when Prince Kong came knocking on his door, and then Prince Rue asked him to cooperate with Prince Kong to beat him in his own game, and take down Prince Kong so that he could rightfully take the throne. After that, he narrated everything that happened in the side chamber in full detail, without any personal feelings. After he finished speaking, he Zhihai stood up again and eloquently recounted Shun Shuhan's defeat. Obviously, these two people's positions were very clear. Yu Zhongxing was alone, so it was fine. However, He Zhihai's position represented the position of the He family at this moment. Unless the He family immediately stood out to sever their relationship with He Zhihai, it was a pity that his parents and grandmother were all present. No one stood out, which meant that they tacitly approved of He Zhihai's actions. And the position of the He family was the position of the Northeast Army. The imperial edict that still had Li Hongyuan's footprints was also brought over and thrown on the ground not far from Li Hongyuan. Li Hongming said that he was the crown prince wisely conferred by imperial father. He is the legitimate heir. Everyone, tell me, do you recognize this imperial edict or not? Li Hongyuan still spoke in a casual tone. However, no one who heard this felt relaxed. I recognize it. Before anyone else could speak, Lu Chengdi spoke up coldly. Many people gasped. Looking at the actions of the living king of hell, he didn't take anyone seriously at all. Your Majesty, are you worried that your third son won't die quickly enough? Prince Rue was first agitated. Then he couldn't stop his blood from turning cold. Evil creature, I'm telling you, I will give the throne to anyone but you. If you want to sit on that throne, I will definitely not recognize or agree to it. If you have the ability, kill everyone here. Imperial father's bones have hardened. However, didn't you hear what I said in the side hall? To put it bluntly, what's the point of killing them all? There are tens of millions of people in Qiyuan. What's the point of killing them all? Also, don't talk to me about killing, karma, and going against the heavens. Even if everyone in the world dies, I won't even blink. Do you understand? Li Hongyuan smiled. He was still as magnificent as ever. However, even those who were loyal to him were terrified when they heard this, and no one would doubt the truth of his words. Although they already knew that Prince Jin's temperament was not good, he was ruthless and unpredictable, but they didn't expect him to be so cold-blooded. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was devoid of humanity. Such a person, what else could tie him down and restrain him? Kinship, filial piety, loyalty, they were all nonsense to him. He wasn't afraid of anyone and didn't judge him. Evil creature, with your temperament, who would work for you? What can you do when you become a loner? Lu Chengdi's voice was cold and hateful. This official pledges to serve Wang Ye with my life, to be the sharp blade in Wang Ye's hand. I will follow Jun's orders. As a fanboy, He Zhihai didn't say anything and immediately knelt down on one knee to express his loyalty. Looking at that attitude, he really hated that he couldn't sacrifice his life for Li Hongyuan and wouldn't hesitate to kill everyone in the world. Lu Chengdi's words of alienation didn't have half an effect before it was torn apart by He Zhihai. Then, among the officials, there were people who looked at He Zhenwei and secretly said, "This old thing, a military general, a boorish man." His son was a muddle-headed person, but unexpectedly, his flattering skill was first class. This official is willing to follow Wang Ye's orders. I will follow Jun's orders. Yu Zhongxing was the second to express his stance. This official is willing to follow Wang Ye's orders. I will follow Jun's orders. Qin Tianming came in with a group of people. The sound of armor was very loud. The Northeast Army is willing to follow Wang Ye's orders. I will follow Jun's orders. At this time, He Jinwei also walked out from his seat and knelt in front of Li Honyuan. If Lu Qingdi still had a little hope before and wanted to use the officials to suppress Li Honyuan, at this time, he only felt his brain buzzing and retreated a few steps. If he wasn't supported by someone, he probably would have fallen to the ground. In fact, it didn't matter whether the civil officials expressed their stance or not. Now, these people, the whole capital, and the surrounding large areas were completely in his hands. If he really wanted to carry out a bloodbath, the others were just lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Li Honyuan looked at Lu Qingdi with a faint smile. As he said, what he wanted was not a matter of whether others gave it or not. You can't be the emperor. You are a devil. You will bring misfortune to Qi Yuan. Lu Qingdi seemed to be holding on to his last breath and still refused. After all, only a few people knew about this. Lu Qingdi's public outburst caused a commotion. However, in reality, the impact was not as great as imagined. After all, he had already said that everyone in the world would die. If things did not go as he wished, then the bloody storm he would stir up would not be as simple as not being ominous. Li Honyuan didn't even bother to argue at this time. It was very boring. Instead, his gaze fell on Li Hongming. Li Hongming, are you still thinking about how to escape? You have the guts to force the emperor to abdicate. Is it because the former Wei is gathering its troops and preparing to attack Qi Yuan? How many benefits did you promise to the former Wei when you colluded with them? It should be no less than 3 counties, right? When these words came out, everyone uniformly looked towards Prince Rue. One had to know that Qi Yuan and the former Wei were mortal enemies. Even if it was the peacemaking faction, when facing the former Wei, there was absolutely no reason to shrink back. Colluding with the former Wei, that was absolutely intolerable. Li Hongming felt as if he was about to be cut into pieces by someone's eyes. The clothes on his back were quickly soaked with sweat in the middle of winter. Li Honyuan, you're slandering me. Li Honyuan scoffed lightly, his gaze turning, landing on Lord Su, the Minister of Rights. As a member of the imperial family of the former Wei, coming to Qi Yuan to climb up and go through hardships, it has been hard on you. The Minister of Rights was originally very calm. Even if Prince Rue was defeated, he believed that Prince Rue would not betray him, because whether he could make a comeback in the future depended on himself. However, he didn't expect that his old background would be exposed. However, with his strong self-control, he didn't show any emotions that he shouldn't have. At first, he was stunned. Then, he panicked and felt wronged. Your Highness, what are you saying? Your Highness, this official. You don't need to act. For me, there is no need for evidence. Your Highness, I have evidence to prove that Prince Rue colluded with the former Wei and committed treason. Princess Lu took this opportunity to stand up without hesitation. She didn't hesitate at all and directly knelt in front of Li Honyuan. Originally, as Li Hongyuan's sister-in-law, she didn't need to be so courteous. Her actions only showed that she already regarded Li Honyuan as the monarch. Prince Rue's eyes were red with anger. He pounced on her as if he wanted to strangle her to death. However, he was kicked aside by He Jihai. Lucier, don't talk nonsense here. Get out of here. Prince Rue roared sternly. In fact, his actions proved that he was indeed colluding with the former Wei. Otherwise, no matter how well he usually pretended, he wouldn't have lost his composure like this. Lucier was unmoved. Her face was very calm. She took out the evidence she mentioned. It was enough to show that she was prepared and cautious enough. There were a few letters. They weren't just from Lord Su. There were also letters from the former Wei Emperor. Li Honyuan casually opened them and took a look. These letters weren't originals. He knew that it was good enough that Lucier could see the letters. If she tried to steal the originals, she probably would have died without a burial place. Where are the originals? Are they still here? Replying to your Highness, they should still be here. Li Hongming has always been suspicious and cautious. He wouldn't easily burn such important things. There should be a secret compartment in his study. Li Honyuan nodded slightly. He didn't need evidence. He only needed to see some information. Therefore, it didn't matter whether the originals were here or not. What do you want? I only ask that your highness spare my 3 daughters. They are girls and won't be a threat to your highness. Since she saw through it, this was all she asked. Yes, your highness. Whether Princess Lu was sincere or not, she was not a person like Ruan Fangfei. She was born and raised in Qiyuan. Everything she cared about was in Qiyuan. Therefore, she couldn't cause any trouble. Li Hanyuan didn't mind letting her go. After all, he wasn't a murderous maniac. Thank you, your highness. After getting what she wanted, Consort Lu felt relaxed. Even if she was a woman who betrayed her husband and would be condemned by everyone, she didn't care at all. Everyone looked at Princess Lu and had different opinions. As the saying went, the husband should be the wife's leader. As the husband, he should be the wife's everything. A woman who stabbed her husband in the back would be scolded badly. However, as women, especially mothers, they could understand her behavior. Therefore, they just sighed in their hearts and didn't say anything. However, when they looked at Li Hongming, they felt that he was unlucky. The first time he was stabbed in the back by the woman he slept with, he was demoted to a commoner. This second time, he would probably be killed. Li Hanyuan still didn't let Lu Qingdi go. He looked at him with a smile and said, "This is the crown prince you admit. He betrayed the country. From these letters, we know that he promised 4 counties of the former Wei kingdom, millions of taels of silver, and many other rare treasures. If he really got his way, the power of Qiyuan would be reduced by at least 30% in a short time. Will the former Wei kingdom give up? Will the southern Qi kingdom not take the opportunity to rob? The Xiongnu were beaten so badly that they are waiting for a chance to take them back. The day when the Qiyuan will be divided is not far away." Lu Qingdi trembled. He couldn't even lift his hand. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, he blacked out completely. Once he fell, he would never have the chance to get up again. "Your Majesty," there were many people who were worried about him. However, after taking 2 steps forward, they paused. To be honest, once an old man lost his supreme power, he had nothing left. No one would revolve around him anymore. Everyone was looking at Li Hanyuan now. They would act according to his mood. Li Hanyuan was still indifferent. Send Imperial Father back to his chamber and call for the Imperial physician. In addition, take Li Hongyi and Li Hongming into the prison and deal with them when Imperial Father wakes up. Detain the relevant family members in the residence and wait for their punishment. The concubines and concubines in the harem are to return to their respective palaces. If Imperial Father is well, naturally everyone is well. If something happens, someone will have to be buried with him. As for the people who participated in the forced abdication, they will be thoroughly investigated by the blackguard. After that, Li Hanyuan flung his sleeves and left. The remaining people looked at each other. That was it. The 99 steps had already been taken. There was only 1 step left. Was he stuck here? At least finish it all in one go. It was the handover of the throne. Just write an imperial edict and stamp it with the imperial seal. How simple was that? Why didn't you carry out the high-pressure policy to the end? At least let those who had other thoughts succumb to your abuse of power. You didn't have any intention at all. Were you forcing those imperial censors to jump out and oppose? If they didn't jump out, they would be disloyal to their duties. How could they endure without an excuse? Quick, who could stop the King of Hell? With his character, if he continued to cause trouble, many people would die. You wanna or don't go. Don't go. Imperial concubine Su suddenly rushed out and fell at Li Hongyuan's feet. She grabbed his clothes. For the sake of our mother-son relationship, can you spare Imperial concubine mother? Imperial concubine mother loves you. Really? Do you believe Imperial concubine mother? You want her, you want it. Li Hanyuan lowered his head and looked at her. He didn't kick her away, but his eyes were a little cold. Imperial concubine Su swallowed. From the first time they officially fell out, she knew that this adopted son was extraordinary. However, she never thought that he was extraordinary to this extent. Just one look was enough to make people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Even if Imperial concubine mother has wronged you, even if my words don't mean what I say, I still raised you and gave you the best of everything. Even if you don't give Imperial concubine mother's face, Imperial concubine mother won't ask for much. Just leave Imperial Concubine Mother's dignity. Anyway, Imperial Concubine Mother won't live for long. Yuan Li Han Yuan half-squatted. Even if in your heart, you only want your own son to sit on the throne. In fact, I can forgive you. I once thought of sitting on the throne and letting you enjoy the glory. Imperial Concubine Su's eyes flashed with hope. Li Han Yuan smiled. Seriously, he had smiled a little too many times in front of outsiders today. However, I gave you a chance, but you didn't take it. When I was 10 years old, you gave me a slow-acting poison to destroy the foundation of my body. Once a month, for 3 consecutive years. If you hesitated once and stopped once, I would have left you some glory. However, do you still remember your performance at that time? You spoke gently and asked about my well-being. Even Imperial Concubine Mother, who is related by blood, can't be compared to you. In fact, I'm quite curious. How did you do it? Imperial Concubine Su's expression froze on her face. It was like a bolt from the blue. You know all about it? I know. I knew from the first time you did it. If I didn't know, wouldn't you have succeeded? Not only do I know this, but I also know that you gave me the sterilization powder when I was 13 years old. It's a pity that you still didn't succeed. Perhaps you thought that it was just a coincidence that Wang got pregnant. After all, the sterilization powder has a very small chance of getting pregnant. It's just like how your daughter-in-law got pregnant for the 3rd time after your son was poisoned with the sterilization powder. However, it's a pity that Wang's pregnancy wasn't a coincidence. The reason why she didn't get pregnant before was because her body wasn't fully developed and the situation wasn't stable, so she used contraception. You women have nothing better to do but use this to attack her. It makes me very unhappy. Li Hong Yuan's words were particularly gentle at this moment. However, not only Imperial Concubine Su, but Jingwan's sisters-in-law also kept quiet out of fear. They regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. They shrank back, afraid that Li Han Yuan would turn around and settle the score with them. Li Han Yuan stood up and kicked Imperial Concubine Su away. Madam Su, don't worry. You won't die so easily. After all, to reach this step today, your contribution is very big. In his previous life, he really did want to assist Li Hongming in ascending the throne. Unfortunately, it was all ruined by this woman, making him suffer enough and fall down. The only good thing was that without those experiences, he probably wouldn't have known Jingwan, and he probably wouldn't have stood up again. However, these people also deprived him of his final spiritual sustenance. When Imperial Concubine Su heard this, she wanted to ask for a quick death. Look after her. If she dies, all of you will be buried with her, Li Han Yuan said to Lu Qingdi's chief eunuch. At this time, what else did they dare to do? They naturally hurriedly agreed and then stared unwaveringly at Imperial Concubine Su. However, everyone's understanding of Imperial Concubine Su went up a level. Truly, one may know a person's face, but not their heart. Her kindness to Jin Xinwang was recognized both inside and outside the palace, but she was so ruthless behind his back. However, it seemed that Jin Xinwang was even more terrifying. 10 years old, he didn't know anything, but he avoided all harm under the eyes of Imperial Concubine Su's people. Was he still human? He was simply an evildoer. Well, to a certain extent, Li Hongyuan was indeed an evildoer. However, in the end, they still overestimated him. In the end, he was only a human, not a god. In his previous life, he was a real child. How could he escape Imperial Concubine Su's schemes? It was because he didn't escape that later. Even if he ascended the throne and gathered the world's famous doctors and the best medicine, he still couldn't live for more than a few years. He was indeed the final winner, but he also suffered too much and lost too much. Li Honyuan left the palace in a carefree manner, but the rest of the people were not so relaxed. However, as Jingwan's grandmother, old Madame Luo, took the lead at this time, the palace is in chaos. We should leave the palace and return to the Fu now. There will be a plan for what to do next. Many people agreed, especially those women with titles. They had suffered quite a bit of shock, so it was best to leave first. However, when they entered the palace, each and every one of them was estranged from the Luo family. At this time, They all unconsciously gathered around old Madame Luo. They didn't even care about their face and held old Madame Luo from head to toe, especially those who didn't leave any manners and offended the Luo family. Now they were so careful that they almost slapped themselves. Old Madame Luo really didn't have any interest in these people. She waved her hand and ignored them. Chapter 584. The Imperial Guards obeyed Yu Zhongqing's orders and detained the relevant personnel. Of course, there were only 3 people at the scene, 2 princes and 1 minister. Prince Rui glared at Yu Zhongqing with hatred and unwillingness. Even if there was no way to salvage the situation, he still couldn't calm down. Yu Zhongqing, didn't you boast of being absolutely loyal to Fu Huang? How did you become Li Hongyuan's dog? What can he give you that this prince can't afford? Prince's brother-in-law colluded with others to defile this official's fiancée and cause her death. Is this reason enough? As the saying goes, every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. This subject does not want to do anything to others. But if your highness does not fall, how can this subject touch your brother-in-law? In addition, what prince shouldn't have done is get involved with Lord Su from the former way. He is the main culprit who destroyed my Yu family. If it wasn't for this official wouldn't have gotten involved in the struggle for the throne. However, Prince Jin is a good master. He'll be a wise ruler. Prince Rui was being held down and gasped for breath. So this was the reason. The Lu family was indeed his bane, and those with the surname Su. Obviously, this Su was not only referring to the Minister of the Board of Rights, but also his mother. Of course, if he knew that Su Mingzhang had betrayed him early on, he would probably go mad with anger. Prince Rui was taken away. Yu Zhongqing turned around and looked at the Minister of the Board of Rights who was staring at him. The other party suddenly smiled. It was clear that he was more tolerant than Prince Rui and the others. Perhaps he had already prepared himself for this. There was actually a fish that escaped the net in the Yu family, and even let you climb to the position of Grand Commander of the Imperial Guards. This is unexpected. Your father knew some things about me. In order to prevent any accidents, I naturally had to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Yu Zhongqing's originally calm face could no longer be maintained at this moment. He clenched his teeth and gripped the hilt of his saber tightly. Only then did he not draw his saber and kill the other party. In the Imperial prison, this official will properly entertain Lord. This sentence was practically squeezed out from between his teeth. Then, this official will wait respectfully. The Minister of the Board of Rights' smile didn't change. Clearly, he was deliberately provoking Yu Zhongqing. However, Yu Zhongqing's tenacity was also beyond expectations. He was not provoked. He was very clear that this person still had value and could not be killed directly. When Lu Chengdi was sent back to his bedchamber, all the imperial physicians had arrived. It was impossible to hide what had happened today. However, the details of what had happened in the palace were different. Even if Li Hongyuan hadn't given the order to keep it secret, some things probably wouldn't have been revealed. Now, all the important officials in the imperial court were waiting for Lu Chengdi to wake up. Of course, if he didn't wake up, there would be another set of rules. Seeing that Lu Chengdi wouldn't wake up for a while, it didn't matter. It wouldn't hinder them from dealing with other matters. However, they wouldn't wait forever. At most, in 3 days, if Lu Chengdi didn't wake up, they, the civil and military officials, would jointly request Jin Wang to ascend the throne. After all, the country couldn't be without a ruler for a day. Jin Wang was extremely surprised to see Li Hongyuan return. Why are you back so soon? She even thought that he would not return to the Wangfu. Wan, this husband suddenly doesn't seem to want to be the emperor anymore. Li Hongyuan directly gave Jing Wan a shock. The expression on Jing Wan's face froze, and then cracked little by little. What kind of joke are you making? Because he would be the emperor, and she would sit on the empress's throne. Following that, she would accept the empress's rights. This was the right cause and effect. It wasn't that she wanted to be the empress and then fully supported her husband to fight for the throne. Therefore, the empress's position to her was just an accessory. If there was, she would accept all the rights and duties. If there wasn't, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, he didn't want to be the emperor now. Those people who worked hard to help him and took great risks to reach this step. Seeing that they were about to pick the fruits of victory, he, as the boss, suddenly didn't want it anymore. Would they agree? Stamping with rage was light. If they were angered, they might hang themselves in front of the Wang Fu's gate. Moreover, Jingwan didn't think about the possibility of him not being the emperor. She had already planned some things. Only when she sat on the throne and had his full support could it be convenient for her to do things. He also knew this. If he didn't become the emperor, wouldn't her hard work be in vain? Well, it wasn't that he couldn't bear it. After all, it wasn't really hard. But didn't you say that even if there was no qualified successor, you could easily destroy it? Now you want to give it to someone else? If someone else sits on the throne, they will also be a puppet. So this matter should still be decided by you. Why do you have to do something superfluous? Moreover, have you ever thought that if our children are good enough but are not princes or princesses, if they want to sit on the throne, they will be criticized without a proper reason? When we are here, I definitely won't worry. But after we are gone, won't our children and grandchildren become the puppet emperor's targets to be eradicated? Also, don't underestimate the power of those officials who are supporting you now. Also, don't underestimate the power of the imperial family. For the sake of benefits, they can do anything. There are a lot of implications here. So, don't think about it all and be willful, okay? Jingwan was really helpless and couldn't help but poke his face with her hand. Can't you do less things that make people go crazy? Li Hanyuan grabbed Jingwan's hand and gently bit her white fingers. He smiled but didn't say anything. Hey, what do you mean? Give me a definite answer. Jingwan felt that he should be joking. But this bastard, he really could do anything. If he acted up, she couldn't figure out what he was thinking. Jingwan was suddenly worried about her future. Once her husband had the right to speak in his hands, the entire world would be at his mercy. Sometimes, he would play with it on a whim. It was a rhythm that would drive her crazy in a matter of minutes. So, he simply didn't want to be the emperor. However, thinking about it carefully, his ability to cause trouble didn't seem to weaken because he couldn't sit in that position. Moreover, if he became the emperor, he could barely be restrained in the imperial palace and the capital. If he didn't become the emperor, there would be no restrictions from above. When he ran around the world, how much trouble would he cause? No matter how she thought about it, it was a headache. Li Hanyuan saw that his wife's face was anxious and always liked to let her imagination run wild. He really didn't know what to do with her. He hugged her in his arms and kissed her. Jingwan couldn't resist. She gave up and let him kiss her to his heart's content. When she was released, her lips were bright red with water, looking especially seductive. Li Hongyuan's thumb gently rubbed her lips. His smile didn't fade. He looked the most gentle. Coupled with his beautiful face, it could make people dizzy in seconds. However, Jingwan's immunity was absolutely strong now. She bluntly rolled her eyes at him and slapped his hand away. Li Hanyuan naturally didn't get angry. He was still smiling happily. Jingwan looked at him, feeling puzzled. A certain person seemed to be more and more off. Why did it feel like he was a bit crazy? Although this hadn't happened before when his illness acted up, it didn't mean that it wouldn't happen to him. Li Hanyuan covered Jingwan's eyes with one hand and kissed the tip of Jingwan's nose. His wife was really so lovable. He was just making her happy, but her reaction was so interesting. Li Hanyuan turned around and hugged Jingwan into his arms. He rubbed his face against her hair. Things wouldn't change anymore. The only thing was, Li Hanyuan caressed Jingwan's stomach from time to time. His eyes were a bit gloomy. Jingwan nestled in his arms and raised her head to look at him. What's the situation in the palace? Originally, the Wang Fu was still waiting for people to come. In the end, there wasn't even a shadow. Jingwan expressed that she wasn't disappointed. Really, there wasn't even a bit of disappointment. According to the plan, the normal procedure of forcing the abdication was to control the emperor's ministers inside the palace and surround the various houses outside the palace. If it was an enemy's house, there would probably be a kill order. As the public enemy, Jin Xin Wang Fu would definitely be the #1 target to attack. Jin Xin Wang Fu attracted more firepower than just this. There are also countless riches. The result? Li Hongyuan gave a brief account of the situation in the palace. So to say, towards Prince Rui, it was us who underestimated him, Jingwan said flatly. However, even if they underestimated him, it was still the same. For example, they originally thought that he only had 60 points, but he achieved 80 points. In front of 200 points, he was still crushed. As for whether he really didn't want to be the emperor anymore, Jingwan didn't get a clear answer and didn't pursue it. In the next 2 days, they clearly experienced a drama of forcing the abdication. However, Jingwan felt that there wasn't any difference from the past. She even suspected that a fake palace coup had happened. Well, that was indeed true. Those who wanted to find Jingwan to pull strings were definitely not in the minority. However, Jin Qinhuangfu's door was not open. Even the thick-skinned He Zhihai was thrown out. Naturally, no one dared to come. According to reason, Li Hongyuan should be quite busy. However, things weren't like this. The matters in his hands were even less than before. It seemed that he was about to grow hair. Jingwan looked at him hesitantly several times. Being a shopkeeper who left his work to others so smoothly, she could already foresee the misery of the court officials in the future. What Jingwan didn't know was that it wasn't only the court officials who were miserable, but also herself. Moreover, the misery of the court officials had actually already begun. After the palace coup, there were many things that happened. The emperor had not woken up, and the future emperor didn't care about matters. Some things the court officials had the right to suggest, but they didn't have the right to decide. Therefore, they could only drag it out. However, the people who participated in the palace coup were pulled out one by one. As the main offenders, they were basically sent to the prison of the blackguard. The rest, as well as many of their family members, were all sent to the prison of the Ministry of Justice. Even if it was complicated and involved a lot of people, no one was soft-hearted and determined to uproot some people. In the short span of 2 to 3 days, although there was no bloodshed, the entire capital was in a state of panic. Even those who did not participate did not have the slightest bit of joy. As for those who were related, they ran around as much as possible, wanting to do something for the people in prison. Among them, the Luo family was the first to bear the brunt of this. It couldn't be helped. Li Hongyuan didn't have an external family. The closest relationship with him was his wife's family, the Luo family. Moreover, Li Hongyuan's importance to Jingwan had basically become a consensus. Therefore, it was normal to find the Luo family. In this case, even if the Luo family wanted to close the door and decline the guests, it would be very difficult. There would always be people who could find a way to find connections to visit, just like those people who were related to the Luo family by marriage. These people naturally couldn't make things too stiff. Among these people, there weren't many who needed old lady Luo to personally come out to receive them. Jingwan's aunts and uncles were different. Basically, they were welcoming and sending people off without stopping. Especially Zhang Shi, who was the mother of Jin Qinhuang's Wang Fei. She had never been so popular, and she wasn't very good in this aspect. However, she still remembered old lady Luo's words. In short, no matter who it was, no matter what they said, pretend not to understand and don't respond to anything. Zhang Shi also felt wronged. What if it was really like this? After this matter was over, her reputation as a naive and sweet would probably spread throughout the capital. However, in order to not cause trouble for her daughter, she still resolutely carried out her mother-in-law's words. The younger generation wasn't spared, especially Sun Yijia. Most of the people in Duke Ding's Fu were in prison, but it was unknown how many of them were married off. Those elders all cried and begged in front of her. They didn't even care about their status and directly knelt down in front of her. This was already not begging. This was coercion. Sun Yijia's face was so dark that it could drip water, but she stuck to her principles and didn't agree to anything. It was obvious that this kind of attitude naturally angered those people. The crying and begging turned into shouting abuse. What heartless liver, no conscience, ungrateful wolf. These were actually more civilized. In the end, because the noise was too outrageous, they were driven away by old lady Luo's people. Sun Yijia didn't cry, but could be seen that she was very uncomfortable. Looking at her made one's heart ache. If this was the case, it would be better for her to cry. The important ministers who weren't involved were still waiting outside Luqing Emperor's bedroom. Out of the 4 ministers, there were only 3 left. Other than the Minister of Revenue, who had already retired and no one had been arranged to fill the vacant position, there were only 3 of the remaining 5. Other than the Minister of Rights, the Minister of War had also retired. Wait for another half a day if Darren, His Majesty, is awake. The chief steward by Luqing Emperor's side immediately came out to report. When these elders entered, the imperial physicians hurriedly retreated to the side. "Greetings, Your Majesty." However, Luqing Emperor couldn't speak clearly. His mouth was obviously a little crooked, and his right hand was bent inward. The emperor had a stroke and was paralyzed. Almost immediately, these big shots received this understanding. But this was also good. Juan Ruizong didn't get up. Instead, he calmly reported everything that had happened after the palace coup. Luqing Emperor seemed to want to say something, but unfortunately, no one understood. In fact, they didn't need to understand. No matter what Luqing Emperor wanted to say, his words were no longer important. After the general situation was explained, it was time for today's highlight. He reprimanded Prince Kong and Prince Rui for their rebellious behavior and let down the emperor who raised and taught them. He said a lot of things with great emotion. Then, he said that the country couldn't be without a ruler for a day. Now that the emperor's health was not good, he should abdicate the throne and rest in peace. That's right, he didn't appoint a crown prince to govern the country. He should abdicate the throne directly. Luqing Emperor's eyes widened. It seemed that his eyes were saying, "I'm not dead yet." The elders kneeling in front of him didn't care whether they understood or not. Except for the one who spoke, the others all looked down and ignored him. Since one person was going to be the emperor, he naturally had to start from among the princes. The 2 princes who had been in prison were definitely not suitable. As for the other princes, although they already knew that they had been drugged, in terms of descendants, only Li Hongyuan was left. However, they didn't want to use this to stimulate Luqing Emperor. Besides, even if they didn't have descendants, they could adopt them from the clan. They believed that many people would be very happy. Therefore, this was not a hard condition. Excluding the younger princes, all the princes in front of him had various shortcomings from birth to temperament to ability. After all, it seemed that only Li Hongyuan was left. They began to praise Li Hongyuan. His birth mother was the imperial noble consort, and the imperial noble consort was called the vice empress. In this way, Li Hongyuan could be regarded as half a legitimate son. Just this point alone made him much better than the others. Then, they praised him in other aspects. They basically picked up what Luqing Emperor had said before from head to toe, from inside to outside. There was nothing bad about him. This kind of person was a natural-born emperor. The throne, who else could it be but him? What made people stare blankly was this really a living king of hell. Even if Jin Xinhuang didn't want his reputation and didn't care about it, they could not care about it. An emperor's reputation sometimes involved the stability of the country. Therefore, he must be covered up, whitewashed, and packaged. For example, the fact that he was a devil and participated in the forced abdication, not a single bit of it could be leaked out. Even if there were many people who knew about it, as long as they didn't have a problem with their brains, they would definitely not mention it. There was no need for Li Hongyuan to give a gag order. They would all take the initiative to seal it. Juan Ruizong had said everything that needed to be said. Then, he personally wrote an imperial edict for succession. Then, he sent the imperial edict and the imperial jade seal to Luqing Emperor, asking the emperor to use the seal. And the current Luqing Emperor simply didn't have the strength to pick up the imperial jade seal. Moreover, he was so coerced, it would be strange if he could use the seal. He also glared at Juan Ruizong with resentment and hatred, as if he never knew this capable Grand Secretary. Juan Ruizong lowered his eyebrows and restrained his gaze, appearing very respectful. He held Luqing Emperor's hand and stamped the imperial jade seal. The anger in Luqing Emperor's eyes almost condensed into substance. Afterwards, Juan Ruizong returned to his original position with the imperial jade seal. This official will solemnly obey the emperor's imperial edict. Getting up, he earnestly exhorted a few words to take good care of the emperor. The others saw the whole process in their eyes and gasped in amazement. Powerful, ah! Powerful, ah! Even Luo Peixan sighed his own inferiority. There are some things that must be done by someone. Juan Ruizong held the imperial edict and faintly sighed. This official is already so old. It's almost time. When a new emperor ascends the throne, I still need everyone's assistance. Everyone, this official will retire and return to his hometown. When the others heard this, they were mostly silent. They understood Juan Ruizong's meaning. He would take responsibility for this matter. Of course, it would be best if there were no problems. They had all seen Jin Qinhuang's attitude. Instead of letting him use bloody means to achieve his goal, it was better for them to give him a path and let him rightfully ascend the throne. This way, they could avoid the deaths and injuries of innocent people and also prevent a possible movement. Moreover, in terms of ability, Jin Qinhuang should be the best candidate. Although they had never seen him do anything, but they could catch a glimpse of what he did behind the scenes. The only thing they needed to worry about was probably his temperament. If he was really temperamental, alas, Luo Peixan shot a glance at Juan Ruizong and inwardly scolded the old fox. He didn't believe that he would be so righteous and sacrifice himself for others. This was clearly an opportunity to claim credit. However, if they didn't know what the other was doing behind the scenes, they might have been deceived. It was all the same. Just because he was Jin Qinhuang Fei's grandfather, if it was him who did it, he would definitely be seen as being selfish. If it was this old fox who did it, people would sigh and even bow to express their gratitude. Elder Cabinet is righteous and cares for the common people. We are not as good as you. Hearing this, Luo Peixan's lips moved, and he lowered his head to prevent himself from accidentally not concealing his emotions. Let's not talk about it. Right now, the capital is in chaos. We should respectfully invite the new emperor to ascend the throne and preside over the overall situation. Juan Ruizong flicked his sleeves. Exactly. Thus, a group of people majestically left the palace and went to Jin Qinhuang Fu to announce the imperial edict. At this time, it was naturally not the turn of the eunuchs. When these people left the palace, the news naturally spread out at the fastest speed. Before they even reached Jin Qinhuang Fu, all the people who should know already knew. It wasn't that there wasn't anyone who knew that it was wrong to let Li Honyuan sit on the throne alone. However, after thinking about it, they didn't stand out in the end. To die for honor, this kind of thing like leaving one's name in the annals of history, wasn't something that everyone had the courage to do. Especially when facing Li Honyuan, that kind of person, if you died, you would have died in vain. The elders of the inner pavilion, led by several ministers, knelt in front of Jin Qinhuang Fu and held up the imperial edict, respectfully inviting Jin Qinhuang to ascend the throne as the emperor. And this imperial edict, although it was within expectations, Jingwan still felt that the efficiency was a bit high. It was done so quickly, there wasn't even a bit of struggle in his heart. Li Honyuan seemed to see what she was thinking and pinched her lustrous white earlobe without earrings. The current court's outstanding talents are more than you expected. At any time, there was actually no lack of people with integrity. It was just that sometimes it was hard to say. Then, Wang, what do you want to do? Don't you plan to go out and receive the imperial edict? Seeing a certain someone who was indifferent, Jingwan always had a bad idea. They invited Ben Wang to ascend the throne. So Ben Wang will ascend the throne? Li Honyuan cast a glance at her. Chapter 585. Because of Jingwan's inaction, some people really hardened their hearts. This time, Li Honyuan seemed to be prepared to be willful to the end. Originally, in everyone's opinion, even if he was reserved, it would be fine. When they were rejected at the door at the beginning, the officials were already mentally prepared. It wouldn't matter if they invited him 3 or 4 times. However, after 5 or 6 days of continuous visits, they were still rejected at the door. This was a bit too much. The originally calm officials were no longer so calm. They scratched their ears and cheeks, frowning. If this continued, there would be no one to preside over the court, and the world's big and small matters piled up. Sooner or later, something was going to happen. Under this kind of situation, it wasn't that no one doubted whether Jin Xinhuang really had no intention of taking the throne. Of course, just as this thought appeared a little, it was jointly extinguished by others. He had done so many things before. Did he have nothing better to do? Therefore, even if you beat them to death, no one would believe that he had no intention of taking the throne. There were still some people who were eager to take action, but before they could do anything, they were seen through by some people's sharp eyes. Without another word, they would beat them up first, just like how Qin Tianming beat up his son-in-law, the Gong Prince. This time, he really beat him up. He didn't care about his status and was quite ruthless. Other than his face, there probably wasn't much normal skin and flesh on his body. If you want to die, find a rope and hang yourself. Don't fucking implicate others. Qin Tianming's words were not polite, but the Gong Prince didn't dare to say anything. The two examples before him were still in prison. He didn't know what would happen to them. Therefore, the number of people who went to Jin Xinhuang's residence increased. From the tale of these big shots, more and more officials followed. Not only that, the members of the imperial family also came out. From the old man whose seniority was comparable to Li Hongyuan's great-grandfathers, to Li Hongyuan's grandchildren, there were really a lot of them. Then, even his brothers came out, crying and wailing, including the Gong Prince. It was as if they couldn't do without him. At this time, Madame Luo also came to Jingwan. Others couldn't see her, but Jingwan wouldn't refuse Madame Luo's visit. When Jingwan faced her grandmother, she also felt very helpless. She was very suspicious. Did he really experience the previous life and become an emperor? Look at what he did. Did it look like something a mature and rational person would do? If you really don't want to be the emperor, just say it directly. All right? Even if you say it, probably no one will believe you and no one will agree. Even if they agree in their hearts, they won't say it out loud. Who knows if you're setting a trap right now, waiting for some of them to jump out so that you can legitimately catch them all in one go. They weren't that stupid. Wang Fei, please persuade His Highness. It's not good to keep waiting like this. There will definitely be trouble. Wang Fei is in a lot of inconvenience now. It's really not advisable to let some unnecessary trouble disturb your peace. Old Madame Luo said to Jingwan and glanced at the other side of the room. Jingwan smiled. Grandmother, don't worry. I will persuade him. Now this subject will take her leave first. Jingwan hesitated a little. In fact, she was a little reluctant. This is also good. It's cold. Grandmother should be careful. Don't catch a cold. Princess, don't worry. The people around her are very attentive. Nothing will happen. After sending Madame Luo away, Jingwan went to the compartment to see Li Hongyuan. Under the bright window, he was half leaning and reading a book, but she didn't know how much he was reading. Jingwan was almost 7 months pregnant. Although she wasn't as careful as other pregnant women, she was slightly clumsy. Li Hongyuan hurriedly got up to support her. Jingwan refused and leaned in his arms, sitting opposite him, face to face with him. It's been so many days, His Highness must have had enough fun. Shouldn't you say enough is enough? Jingwan said with a smile. A few days ago, Jingwan might have doubted his true thoughts, but these 2 days, she knew that he was purely acting up. What do you mean by fun? I'm fishing. Li Hongyuan was very self-righteous. Okay, fishing, but the current situation is that the fish doesn't dare to take the bait. It will not dare to jump out easily in the future. If you continue to fish like this, you will probably annoy the court. No matter what you think, they will think that you have no interest in the throne and will look for another candidate. Li Hongyuan smiled lightly with a bit of sarcasm in his eyes. Give them 100 times the courage to try. His line of sight fell on Jingwan's stomach. She really shouldn't have caused any trouble, but it was about time. Li Hongyuan reached out to touch her face. The palace is still in chaos. Wait for me to arrange it before I bring you into the palace. Jingwan nodded and smiled. You go, the Wangfu also needs to be tidied up. Li Hongyuan got up and kissed her on the lips before leaving. The door of Jin Wangfu finally opened. For the people who had been waiting outside for too long, it was a bit sudden. However, after a moment of daze, they reacted and hurriedly paid their respects. At this moment, there was a feeling of hot tears. It was so difficult to invite the new emperor to ascend the throne. The days in the future were simply unimaginable. Ruan Ruizong was about to read the imperial edict when Li Honyuan waved his hand. Enough. How this thing came about, everyone was well aware. Even if it was just a formality, Li Honyuan wasn't interested in listening. Now, everything was decided by him. The originally willful and rash person had no restraints, no worries. Li Honyuan didn't stop and continued to walk out. The people on the outside hurriedly retreated like a tide, and the people who were originally at the front hurriedly kept up with his footsteps. Arrange the imperial carriage. Welcome the new emperor into the palace. Li Honyuan looked at the imperial carriage in front of him. It was obviously something that his old man had used before. Change it. Everything that he used, change it all. Then use his prince's ceremonial guard to enter the palace. Those who didn't know would praise Jin Wangfu for not ascending the throne and not using the imperial carriage. Those who knew could only hurriedly do as told and didn't dare to say half a word. The speed of entering the palace wasn't fast, and there was a group of old Darren following outside. No matter what, Li Honyuan wouldn't be so deranged as to let them follow. Now, the most important thing was, of course, the ascension. The date had already been calculated. However, without waiting for them to report the date, Li Honyuan once again interrupted them. Put it on the 2nd of the 2nd month. Moreover, the emperor's coronation ceremony will be held on the same day. Your Majesty, the time was a bit too tight. Moreover, the empress had to be conferred. Wasn't this the rhythm of people being busy to death? Moreover, the local congratulatory gifts couldn't be sent to the capital even if they were slightly further away. Everyone was in a hurry, so there would be a pile of things to do. What is their problem? Li Honyuan indifferently asked. The person who spoke quivered, replying to Your Majesty, there isn't. If there isn't, then cut the crap. Li Hongyuan's tone was still flat, but it always made people feel that he was impatient. Li Honyuan didn't wait for the following matters to be reported one by one. For example, the arrangement of the harem members. Although Emperor Lu Cheng was still alive, since he was paralyzed in bed, the existence of the concubines was no longer necessary. They were dealt with according to the rule of the death of the husband. As for those who were more important and special, the empress was abolished, the imperial concubine was demoted, and concubine Xian was demoted and had to serve Emperor Lu Cheng. When Emperor Lu Cheng passed away, she had to be buried with him. Concubine Shu was conferred the title of Grand Concubine. Of course, Li Honyuan only needed to give these orders. He wouldn't ask about how to deal with them later. However, if it wasn't handled well, there would definitely be people who would suffer. After that, it was about the treatment of Li Hongyi, Li Hongming, and the others. Li Honyuan didn't intend to kill these two people and directly demoted them to commoners. As for the rest of the people, those who should be killed were killed, those who should be demoted were demoted, those who should be exiled were exiled, and those who should be confiscated were confiscated. In short, there was only one word, according to the law. But at the end, he added a sentence, pardon without mercy. The people outside all praised the emperor for his wisdom. Originally, based on the previous attitude of forcing the emperor to abdicate, they were actually prepared for the emperor to start a massacre. They didn't expect him to be so benevolent and were very surprised. However, it also made their hearts sink. It was better than expected. Perhaps it could be regarded as a good start. In addition, for the younger brothers and sisters who were not married, a princess residence was opened outside the palace and unified to educate the unmarried princesses. When they reached the age, all of them would be married off. There would be no princess residence. The rule that the emperor's son-in-law couldn't be an official was also abolished. The remaining younger brothers would all be conferred the title of a prince. However, it was only a title. The actual treatment was less than 1/10 of that of a prince. However, if they wanted to match the status of a prince, they had to work hard and strive for it. In other words, Li Honyuan wouldn't suppress them. If they were capable, they could do it. They would be given real power and authority. These were really breaking the rules of the ancestors. Your Majesty, please don't shut up. I didn't ask for your opinions. You just need to do as I say. Hearing this, they could only swallow the rest of their words. The current emperor was completely different from the previous one. He made arbitrary decisions. It could be foreseen that the courtiers who had met him knew best in their hearts. Therefore, they all pretended to be mute and let others be the cannon fodder. After he finished talking about these messy matters, Li Honyuan clearly did not intend to speak anymore. These matters had more or less covered most of the major matters in the capital. If there were still some minor matters that he needed to ask about, the next time he would flare up at these officials. Although there was still a pile of memorials waiting for Li Honyuan to read, these courtiers didn't need to follow his carriage anymore. After all, they were old. Even if they were slow enough, they would get tired after walking for a long time. The imperial palace was still under the strict control of the Imperial Bell Army. People in each palace were not allowed to enter easily. It was already the 8th day of the lunar month. From the top to the bottom, it could be said that everyone was in a state of panic. No one knew where the road ahead was, so they didn't care about the lack of food, accommodation, and other inconveniences these days. When Li Honyuan entered the palace, although he knew that the time to decide his fate had come, he felt a sense of relief because he had been hanging in the air for too long. However, it was obvious that they couldn't wait for Li Honyuan to deal with them. These trivial matters would obviously be handed over to the newly appointed internal court team headed by Eunuch Mu. Eunuch Mu was obviously familiar with the affairs in the palace, but he wasn't so clear about the things related to the dignity of the emperor. But it didn't matter. At this time, there were definitely a lot of courtiers who were willing to curry favor with him. No matter how high they used to be, in order to stay, they could lower themselves to the ground. The fact that Eunuch Mu could stay by Li Hongyuan's side for so many years without being replaced or dying was enough to prove his ability and intelligence. Therefore, it was not difficult to get started. The first stop was naturally to move the Empress out of the Kunyi Palace. As for the imperial edict, it didn't matter. They could make it up later. If Li Hongyuan forgot it, he would forget it. The entire Kunyi Palace was changed inside and outside. However, the people in the Ministry of Internal Affairs were familiar with this kind of thing. Basically, it would happen every time the master changed. Therefore, a lot of things had been prepared. Although they didn't know why the Empress's place was changed first, they didn't need to know. At this time, they just needed to bury themselves in work. It was just changing things. It was not like Jingwan's previous life, where there was a big renovation. Therefore, it was done quickly. Eunuch Mu looked inside and out. Except for the details, he was basically satisfied. The arrangement of these details could only be handled by the princess's nanny. Although the empress and the princess used different things, they still used the same things on a daily basis. In this case, it was estimated that a lot of things would be moved in from Prince Yu's mansion. Eunuch Mu was very clear that when he was in Prince Yu's mansion, he would change things slowly. He would not change too many things at one time, which would make people feel strange. He needed to be influenced subtly and take into consideration the princess's preferences. Of course, the entire Kunyi Palace would not be staffed by the people in the main courtyard of Prince Yu's mansion. However, the Ministry of Internal Affairs had a lot of people. Many people tried their best to squeeze in. Therefore, when Eunuch Mu was lecturing, except for the people who should occupy the most important positions around the Empress, the rest were all here. However, he still didn't know the background of these people. They could be all kinds of evil spirits, but it didn't matter. He could take it slowly. He didn't need to worry about this kind of thing. After dealing with it, Eunuch Mu went to report to Luqingdi. At this moment, Li Honyuan was dealing with political affairs in the imperial study. Although he didn't want to sit on that chair, the dragon chair was not easily changed. It took time to rebuild it, so he could only make do with it. However, Li Honyuan disliked it very much and let people wipe it countless times. There were many officials under the imperial study. In the capital, all the officials above the 3rd rank who were still in office were all in place. The number of people who had faced the real Li Honyuan was still only a minority. In their view, although Jin Xinwang's secret methods were exceptional, but in the end, he had not learned the arts of the emperor, nor had he come into contact with any political affairs. The affairs of the world were not the same as those of him before. Therefore, the majority only thought that he would be flustered, unable to sort out his thoughts, and would inevitably need their assistance. At that time, he must perform well. However, Ruan Ruizhong, Luo Peishan, Qin Tianming, and the others were very obedient. In short, if Li Hanyuan didn't ask, they wouldn't speak. If Li Hanyuan spoke, they would listen respectfully. If he asked, they would tell him everything. Anyway, it was not like facing the new emperor at all. However, when Li Hanyuan dealt with the matters one by one, his words were concise and comprehensive. He went straight to the point and was decisive. His efficiency was also surprisingly high. Those who originally wanted to show their skills unconsciously broke out in a cold sweat. Li Hanyuan also didn't get angry. His tone was even consistent from beginning to end. However, it still made people not dare to breathe loudly. Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan looked at each other. Their eyes were full of shock. Although they had already seen Li Hongyuan's ability to deal with things, now that they thought about it, he still restrained himself a lot. Was this like a new emperor? No. Lu Chengdi, who had been the emperor for 20 to 30 years, was far inferior to him. Li Hanyuan was born to be an emperor. Originally, they thought that it would take a long time to clear up the matter. Li Hanyuan spent half a day. However, the area around the imperial desk was also quite chaotic. Li Hanyuan only read a few sentences of those useless memorials and threw them out. In the future, you don't have to hand in any memorials that only pay respects to me. Return any memorials that don't get to the point. Memorials that don't get to the point in 3 sentences should be sent back. Memorials for various matters should be separated by color. In short, all memorials must be known about the contents before they are opened. Once they are opened, the contents must be concise and accurate. If the memorials are returned 3 times, they will immediately be demoted by 3 ranks. Yes, Your Majesty. Ruan Ruizhong respectfully replied. The fire had already burned before he ascended the throne. However, after seeing Li Hongyuan's power, no one dared to say a word. If they weren't careful, the memorials might fall on their heads. It was better to think about how to draft the regulations and implement the matter. After intimidating everyone, Li Hanyuan restrained himself a little. At least, he let these officials relax a little. We are currently short of manpower. 3 out of the 6 ministers are missing. There are still other positions. You all should know that after the ascension ceremony, it will be a court selection. There will also be an additional imperial examination. We are preparing to divide the imperial examination from the Ministry of Personnel and hand it over to the Ministry of Rights. You all should also be prepared. As soon as these words were spoken, it caused a lot of commotion. This was clearly weakening the power of the Ministry of Personnel. Some people secretly looked at Luo Peishan, faintly guessing that the new emperor was already preventing the relatives of the emperor from becoming too powerful. Luo Peishan was very calm. Previously, when Li Hanyuan and Jingwan were in Jiangnan, Li Hanyuan had presided over an imperial examination. At that time, Li Hanyuan had already mentioned some plans to him. Although he didn't know that Jingwan's opinion was mixed in, he had already considered these matters. The Ministry of Personnel's power was indeed a little too powerful, causing a serious imbalance among the 6 ministries. From a long-term perspective, this was not a good thing. Therefore, if Luo Peishan knew what they were thinking, he would definitely tell them that they were really thinking too much. After dealing with these matters, Li Hanyuan dismissed them. Time was tight. Therefore, it was obviously not advisable to let the Ministry of Rights complete the ascension ceremony. Now that the Minister of Rights was gone, Luo Peishan was probably still needed to be in charge of the regulations. However, later on, some people remembered that the 2nd of February seemed to be the birthday of the new princess consort. So, the emperor chose this day for this purpose. Although it was somewhat inconceivable, there was always a voice in their hearts faintly telling them that this was the truth. Li Hanyuan went to see the Kunyi Palace and ordered people to make adjustments. Then, everyone faintly felt that the new emperor seemed to be preparing to live in the Kunyi Palace. After all, there was a change inside and outside the palace, but he didn't even set foot in the emperor's bedroom. Although Lu Chengdi was still living in it now, since the new emperor had ascended the throne, he would definitely move out. Based on Li Hongyuan's previous actions, no one would think that he was filial and would not force Lu Qingdi to do anything. Lu Qingdi had been waiting for Li Hongyuan the whole day, but Li Hongyuan seemed to have forgotten about him. And all the things in the palace, with Li Hongyuan's tacit consent, were actually all passed into his ears. He originally wanted to stay and not leave. He didn't believe that Li Hongyuan could kill him. Being unfilial was one thing. Killing the monarch and patricide was a completely different level. Based on Li Hongyuan's actions these days, Lu Qingdi didn't think that he really didn't care about his reputation. However, when he was ready to go all out, the result was that his fist didn't even hit the cotton. Lu Qingdi was fiercely angry again. At this time, Li Hongyuan returned to Jinqin Wangfu. When Jingwan saw him, she didn't say anything. She smiled and hooked her arms around his neck. It was unexpected, but reasonable. They talked about the outside world, which was basically the daily life between a husband and wife. So, Yuan, you didn't pay attention to him at all. Then where are you going to move him? In fact, Jingwan knew that her husband really wanted to kill the monarch. However, in this life, some things didn't happen. Moreover, living might not be a good thing. Sometimes, it was better to die than to live. Isn't there a palace in Mount Xiang? Let him go there. Chapter 586. Yuan, you. Jingwan wanted to say something, but stopped. What? Li Hongyuan looked down at her. Jingwan shook her head again. As long as he was happy, it was fine. Reputation was something that others put on him. He had never been someone who cared about what others thought. So, why should she force him to care? Those people added together were far less important than him. In his previous life, he was not happy and unrestrained. In this life, he should be happy and unrestrained. Moreover, his status and ability gave him the right to be unrestrained. Of course, after becoming the emperor, he had no problem tormenting the ministers, but he could not torment the common people. As the saying goes, there was no absolute freedom. So, everything had a bottom line. Thinking of this, Jingwan slowly smiled. However, Li Hongyuan seemed to know what Jingwan wanted to say. Wan, you have to know that your husband has never been a kind person. He holds grudges, is petty, and will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He has always only remembered the bad things of others and not the good things of others, unless he could be completely good and flawless. Obviously, Lu Qingdi and noble consort Su were the kind of people who actually treated him well, but not completely. Li Hongyuan saw through people and things very clearly. The scale in his heart was also quite clear. What about me? In your heart, do I also have the same standard? Jingwan asked curiously. You? Your husband will only go from bad to worse. Li Hongyuan skillfully held her waist and unceremoniously slapped her buttocks. This action made Jingwan embarrassed and angry. Her face was like a peach blossom. She opened her mouth and bit Li Hongyuan's shoulder. Li Hongyuan had been bitten by her many times, but he just let her do as she pleased. At this time, Jingwan could not really be ruthless. Moreover, it was winter. With Li Hongyuan's physique, he had to wear several layers of clothes. It was not so easy to bite his flesh. Therefore, Jingwan rubbed her cheeks after taking a bite. Li Hongyuan looked at her appearance and couldn't help but laugh. His wife now was more and more different from when they first met. But what could he do? He seemed to like her more and more. He liked her so much that if something really happened to her, he could poke a hole in the sky and flatten the earth. The husband and wife were in a harmonious state again. However, as the person who shared the same bed, if Jingwan were to say that she was the second in understanding Li Hongyuan, no one could claim to be the first. Therefore, after Jingwan sent Li Hongyuan off the next day, she wondered what else was in his heart. To be honest, Jingwan felt that he had been too gentle during this period of time. Although he had always been gentle and considerate, he would occasionally go crazy, throw a cold face, or even ridicule her. This was normal. This kind of gentle all the time was not like him. It was as if he was wrapping all his negative emotions in a shell, not allowing any of them to leak out. He was a person at the level of a demon king. Instead of venting his negative emotions, he wrapped them up tightly. When the day came that he would suddenly explode, who knew how terrifying it would be? However, Jingwan also clearly knew that in his current state, even if she asked, he would most likely answer perfunctorily. So what was in his heart? Jingwan touched her stomach from time to time, a little lost in thought. Suddenly, the child moved again. Jingwan came back to her senses, and at the same time, she had a sudden flash of inspiration. In his heart, the most secretive thing was probably her death. And her death, in his opinion, was related to the child. However, Jingwan felt that if the dream she had was really something that had happened in the past, then in fact, it couldn't be completely blamed on the child. So, what he was worried about was actually her death. He was worried that she would leave him again. Jingwan lowered her head and was slightly silent. His heart was like a double silk net with thousands of knots in it. Her death was the thousands of knots in his heart. No matter how many people's fates he changed, that day couldn't be crossed, and the knot in his heart couldn't be untied. So, there were some things that were useless to say. Day by day, the irrelevant people in the palace were cleared out, including Lu Qingdi. When he said that he would be moved to Xiangshan, he was moved to Xiangshan. Even after Li Hongyuan ascended the throne, Wei Xian, who had been demoted to a palace maid, was moved to Xiangshan. No matter how much she cried, it was useless. Even bringing up her son didn't help. She even directly told her that if Lu Qingdi lived, she would live. So if she wanted to live at Xiangshan Palace, anyone could neglect Lu Qingdi, but she couldn't. Don't blame Lu Qingdi for having so many women. She was treated like this. In Li Hongming's collusion with the former Wei, she also played a role in it. The only person in the harem who hadn't been touched was probably Qin Shufei. She became the most special one, and naturally, she couldn't be at peace. However, it was a special time now, and people outside the palace couldn't pass a token to enter the palace. So, it was not difficult. The palace was tidied up. Li Hongyuan sent people to bring Jingwan into the palace. When he entered the palace, he was still the prince's guard of honor. Now, Jingwan was the empress's guard of honor with the phoenix chariot. Everyone was there. If he didn't have something to do, he would have gone to pick her up himself. In this way, it was so high profile that it made people's hair stand on end. To put it more seriously, it was an overstep in his eyes. He should be severely impeached. However, this was the order of the King of Hell. Lu Qingdi had been dealt with by him. What else dared others to say? Moreover, they had to hide the matter of Lu Qingdi for him. It was probably the first time in history that he had done this before becoming the emperor. Jingwan looked at the phoenix chariot in silence for a moment, and then calmly got on. However, because she was pregnant, the servants who served her were very careful, especially those who came from the palace. They really wanted to pounce on Jingwan and stand on her feet. Just like that, Jingwan looked at the long queue with limitless glory and unparalleled honor. Yuan was by her side. Although they had cleared the area in advance, they didn't see any ordinary people coming forward. However, there are no green curtains on both sides, so they could still see the crowd in the distance. At this moment, Jingwan seemed to have a real understanding of the words motherly model of the world. Now, her identity was different. After entering the palace, she naturally went directly to the Kuan Palace. She didn't have to walk by herself. Along the way, all the people she saw knelt on the ground. She was really different. In the great Qi Yuan dynasty, she was the most noble woman. It wasn't that Jingwan hadn't stepped into Kunyi Palace before, but it was mostly in the main hall. She had never set foot in other places. However, from now on, this place would belong to her for a long time. The front hall didn't change much. Although the layout of the bedroom was very different, there were still many familiar things. It was enough to show that the decorator had put in a lot of effort. Jingwan even saw an open book on the couch beside the bed. She read it last night, and even the number of pages was the same. It was necessary to adapt to a strange environment for the first time. Therefore, Jingwan and Bai Xiao, who were married, followed her into the palace. The only one who was absent was Fu Rong. Her mission, or rather, her road of revenge, had begun. Jingwan, on the other hand, felt that there was no need to go to this extent. She was not made of paper. Moreover, she thought that she was quite adaptable. However, whether it was her husband or the people around her, she should not reject their good intentions. In fact, after a whole day, Jingwan didn't feel uncomfortable at all. When she was in the Wang mansion, she could find something to do, so she could do it here too. Whatever she did at that time, she could still do it now. It seemed like she had just changed her location. After all, she was now seriously ill and had not been conferred title. She didn't need to take care of the palace affairs. The servants of the Kuini Palace wanted to curry favor with her, but they were all stopped outside. Now, Jingwan's wet nurse, the previous supervisor nanny, was naturally in charge of the personnel of the Kuini Palace. She might not be very clear about the rules of the palace, but Nanny Gong was very clear about it. She had already reminded her before, so it was not difficult for her to learn it now. After a night's rest, Li Hanyuan was by her side, so she still slept well. People from the Ministry of Internal Affairs asked to see Jingwan. The Empress's conferring ceremony and the new Emperor's ascension ceremony were on the same day. Now, there were only 20 days left. The dragon and phoenix robes had to be made in a hurry. However, they couldn't be careless at all. Those embroiderers had to work overtime. Jingwan certainly couldn't be approached by anyone now. However, it could be said that new clothes were being made every day around her. Therefore, people around her were very clear about her size. However, there were still 20 days left before the conferring ceremony. At that time, her body shape would definitely change. In order to wear the phoenix robe that was the most fitting, she definitely needed to be measured several times during this period to ensure that the final clothes would be the most fitting. Clothing was the most troublesome thing for a pregnant woman, especially in the later stages. It was normal for a woman's body to change from day to day. However, for someone in a high position, it was impossible for them to be like the average person. They couldn't afford to wear big and loose clothing from the start. They would only have a few pieces of clothing from start to finish, especially now that Jingwan had Li Hanyuan, that crazy wife-doting devil. If she wanted to compromise, no one would agree. She would have new clothes that fit her every day. Of course, not only the phoenix robe, Jingwan's other clothes also needed to be made. There were rules for the phoenix robe, but other clothes could be made according to Jingwan's preferences. At this time, Jingwan had nothing to do, so she followed them to have a look. The people of the Imperial Household Department were naturally attentive and tried their best to please Jingwan. Of course, they also tried their best to learn about Jingwan's preferences. After seeing a lot, a palace servant came in and reported that Great Elder Princess wanted to see her. Jingwan hurriedly got up and went out to greet her. Not to mention that she hadn't been conferred the title yet. Even if she was conferred the title, Great Elder Princess was also her elder and her adoptive mother. Naturally, she wouldn't treat others as her adoptive mother. Seeing Jingwan come out and walk quickly, Great Elder Princess hurriedly walked up and said, "Why are you so reckless, child?" Although she reprimanded her, there was a hint of intimacy in her tone. "Didn't I miss you, adoptive mother?" Jingwan said with a smile, "You're about to be the mother of the country. Why are you still so childish?" Great Elder Princess held her and said with a smile. However, her body was cold, so she let go of her after holding her for a while. "Am I not your adoptive daughter, as the mother of the country? Don't worry, adoptive mother. At other times, I'm still very dignified." Jingwan pretended to raise her arms. Great Elder Princess was amused by her, and the strange feeling in her heart faded a little. Deep down, she was still the same person. Jingwan wanted to hold Great Elder Princess's hand, but Great Elder Princess hurriedly stepped back and let her maid help her into the hall. The feeling inside the room was absolutely different from outside the room. Great Elder Princess's cloak couldn't be worn at all. After serving tea, snacks, and dried fruits, Jingwan dismissed them. Great Elder Princess must have something to tell her, since she came to see her at this time. Great Elder Princess saw it. She always knew that Jingwan was a thoughtful person, but there were some words that had to be said. She said it in a bold way for the sake of the Qi Yuan. During the whole process of fighting for the throne, Great Elder Princess stayed out of it. She even asked her son and the others to be idle people. No matter who tried to draw them to her side, she ignored them. In fact, her choice was not wrong. She used to be noble, and her status was still stable now. However, the person who would sit on the throne in the end was completely unexpected. She could only be miserably deceived like others. However, Great Elder Princess didn't care about this. For the sake of the throne, any means could be used. What Li Hongyuan did was his ability. Besides, Great Elder Princess didn't lose anything. On the contrary, as a princess, some of Li Hongyuan's decisions were actually beneficial to her. After all, in the past 2 days, as the people in the palace were arranged and dealt with one after another, some edicts had been issued one after another. Now, not only her son, but even her husband might become an official. What could be more delightful than this? As for Li Hongyuan's handling of other things, she also got the news through her own channels. In other words, Li Hongyuan deliberately let those who were observant know. His ability was recognized and trusted, but Great Elder Princess was actually very worried about his temperament. What kind of temperament he showed in the past might be deliberately disguised, but Great Elder Princess had reason to believe that it was actually his true temperament most of the time. For an emperor, that kind of temperament was definitely not a good thing. From this point of view, Great Elder Princess felt that any of his brothers was more suitable for the throne than him. As a princess of the royal family, she naturally supported the royal family wholeheartedly and hoped that the Li family would pass on for generations to come. After taking 2 sips of tea, Great Elder Princess began to speak slowly. When I was young, because I was doted on by my father and mother, I did not stick to the small world of the palace. I often sneaked out of the palace and liked to make friends. In my life, I have seen many extraordinary women. They were either beautiful, intelligent, kind, or ambitious. However, there were a few that I admired. One of them was Empress Sunday. She did not lack intelligence, beauty, skill, or ambition. She did not hesitate to go against her mother's wishes and became the first woman in the world to be the mother of the world. However, I did not like her very much because her ambition was a little too big. My brother and her only maintained the most basic relationship as husband and wife. Her only son was also not taught well and was estranged from her, just like Shang Feng and her subordinate. The relationship between her mother and her was also particularly stiff. In the end, she also ended up being abolished. Jingwan felt that Great Elder Princess might really admire Empress Sun, but she also seemed to mock Empress Sunday. It was very contradictory. However, it was beyond Jingwan's expectation that Great Elder Princess could see through Empress Sun so thoroughly. However, Jingwan probably knew what Great Elder Princess wanted to say, but it seemed that it had nothing to do with her. In addition, Imperial concubine Su actually admired Empress Sunday. Even though there were countless beauties in the Imperial harem every year, and there was no lack of talented and beautiful women, Empress Sun had always been the most favored one in the Imperial harem for 20 or 30 years. Do you know why? Jingwan pondered for a moment. Maybe she knew the reason, but it seemed a little vague, so she shook her head. Because she knew my brother, Great Elder Princess, sighed with emotion. She was the woman who knew my brother best in the world. Although she was not very likable, it couldn't be denied. Of course, her understanding might not be able to grasp it. As a matter of fact, she failed in the end. It was easy. Hearing this, Jingwan was touched. She didn't know what she thought of, but she was slightly lost in thought. Great Elder Princess said earnestly, "Emperors are also mortals. They have 7 emotions and 6 desires. They have personal preferences, love, and hate. It's a great fortune to be loved by the Emperor. It's also a great misfortune that you have to think carefully about every word and action. If you're not careful, you may follow your own preferences and emotions and influence the Emperor's heart. It's not a big deal for trivial things, but it's a serious matter that will bring disaster to the country and people, be condemned by the public, and leave a bad name for thousands of years. Since ancient times, all kinds of things have been common." Great Elder Princess said earnestly, "Emperors are also mortals. They have 7 emotions and 6 desires, personal preferences, love, and hate. It's a great fortune to be loved by the Emperor. It's also a great misfortune that you have to consider every word and action carefully. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.